Well, I don't know if many of you had tuned in on Thursday, and I do apologize. I got a late notice out. I was under the weather. I had the stomach bug, the stomach flu, got inside of me around Wednesday, and it sure did not leave until I attended church service on Sunday. And my pastor was sitting up there talking about the healing power of 2024 and more in 2024, and truly seeking that out. And I happened to be part of our worship band, and I sat up there and sang Michael W. Smith's DeAngelis, and I really felt that there was a healing going on stage. And I know a lot of people out there are probably maybe suspicious of that. I was healed on Sunday, and I know that that is only through the power and grace of our Lord and Savior. Hey, thanks for coming back here Tuesdays and Thursdays at the DPB show. We've got a show today that I think is second to none. First and foremost, because I've never set out to make this about me. You know, when I ran for state representative, it was never about me. It was about the people of Illinois. I took on an incumbent at the time. I had no clue what I was doing. In fact, I was stumbling, fumbling, and bumbling. Fortunately, I had a friend in Darren Bailey. We came together. Both of us ran for state representative. And through that journey, you guys have seen it, walked out on the radio show and here in studio, that we just begun to fight. I don't even think that we realized what was transpiring in our lives and where we were being moved and called to be, to stand in this gap that exists here in Illinois. And that gap is a chasm. But thank God there are people, there truly are, that are willing to be part of this fight. I know there are many up north, Shannon Adcock with the Wake, Illinois. We have now Christina Mac Glosson, who just was able to secure the chairmanship of Will County. And there are many others throughout the townships and of Cook County. I mean, the list is growing. We saw it in the 2022 election season. Not only for governor, but for attorney general. And we also saw it in the courtroom back in 2020 when we had Tom DeVore representing Darren Bailey in a lawsuit against J.B. Pritzker. That was just the scratch of the scratch. And so I'm not going to belabor this thing. We've got two dynamic human beings who I believe are truly the driving force, the tip of the spear for Illinois. If we're going to restore Illinois, if we're going to truly make Illinois great again, then we're going to have to change the way we're doing business. We can't continue to do the same thing over and over again, expecting that we're going to recapture territory, because the Democrat Party isn't going to give it to us. We're going to have to go and take it. And in order to take it, we need more people representing the civil liberties, the Constitution of Illinois. And right now we don't have that. So as I said, I'm not going to belabor this. I'm going to bring my guest here into studio. I'm going to exit my layout, and there they are. There they were. Darren went out again, I think, Tom.
It's those solar fields, man.
But when he gets back in, I'm going to let him get reconnected, and I'll bring him back in. But obviously, Tom, thank you for being here with us today at the DPB show. This is such a critical message at such a critical time. I'm going to let you kind of give the audience a little backdrop to how you came to the conclusion you did with what you have been putting out recently on your social media posts. So take it away, Tom.
Thank you. When I ran for office in 2022 for Attorney General, I never had any expectation that would be able to win that race. It's just not possible for a Republican to win a statewide race, in my opinion. But I didn't really understand why. I'm like, what is it about our political system that makes it pretty much impossible for a Republican to win a statewide race, let alone for Republicans to win House seats and Senate seats in the Illinois legislature? So I wanted to understand it and try to figure it out systemically in detail, because a lot of people will talk about Oh, it's rigged, or oh, there's people cheat, and that's not an answer. That's not facts as specifically why we can't win. So after the election, November 22, I spent a lot of time going to events, spending a lot of time with, what people would call the establishment politicians. And they're not bad people. I'm not here to criticize anybody. But I wanted to understand how that worked to try to appreciate why new grassroots people with different ideas might not be able to get into the game. Because we know for certain, I'm talking about the House of Representatives, David, we have went in the last 10, 12 years from 54 seats to 40 seats out of 118 seats in the Illinois House of Representatives. Something's not working. So how come we keep losing seats, and the people that are still there, I call them the fabulous 40 now because we have 40 people, except for a few, really aren't fighting for Republican beliefs and ideas. And we'll get into more detail later. And I finally now understand that they don't fight for Republican ideas because they're being financed pretty much by Democrats. And the Democrat funding that they get through the teachers union prohibits them from being able to really do anything to benefit Republicans, because as human nature, if these fabulous 40, the ones that are taking Democrat money, were using that money to promote Republicans and increase our playing field to 45 or 50 or 55 seats, if they use the money for that purpose, the Democrats wouldn't give them the money anymore.
Mm-hmm.
The only reason the Democrats give them the money is because the way they use the money perpetuates and makes our super minority status either worse or stagnant. And we'll get into more details, but I finally learned and can specifically give examples of why Republicans can't gain ground, especially in the House of Representatives. I see it, I understand it, I can show people the math, and it's all driven by Democratic money. And there's this dysfunctional codependent relationship between people in the Illinois Education Association, the Democrats, they're all Democrats, and certain House members. 2 out of 3 of our House members in leadership in the Republican 40 take money from the Democrats. Let's talk about it. Darren knows, and we'll talk about that.
Well, and Darren was able to reconnect. Thank you. I'm glad that he was able to rejoin us. But Tom, obviously, I'm married to a teacher who has never supported her teachers union because she's watched the takeover of our public school system here in Illinois. And I think it's not only Illinois, it's happening throughout the country, that the education associations, the National Education Association, and each one of their state charter memberships have done the same in a lot of states. Other states haven't necessarily felt the impact as we have here in Illinois. But I just want to make sure our audience, being married to a school teacher, has an understanding that out of the 102 counties, we have 118 state representatives. The makeup right now of our General Assembly on the House side is 78. In fact, the Speaker of the House brags about having 78 members. He calls them the Great 78. I don't know if that's ever been achieved before in Illinois, but he's obviously making a big deal of it. So as Tom said, we have 40 Republican reps and 78 Democrat reps. On the Senate side, there are 59 state Senate districts in Illinois. And right now, unfortunately, we stand at 18, right, Darren? We're at 18?
Yes.
18. So that means there are 18 Republican state senators and 41. I don't know if those numbers have ever been achieved before either. And with that, it's been intentional, as you said, Tom, which that's a segue to you to go back to the IEA and explain, how did we get here? I mean, Darren and I have a good understanding of the juggernaut of going against the incumbency of the Republican Party. But when you talk about a well-funded machine that Mike Madigan has put in place that I think can last for a very long time, because once again, he knew who controlled the state of Illinois. And it wasn't Mike Madigan. I always used to say it was Mike Madigan, but it wasn't. He was a figurehead. We said this offline earlier. It's not J.B. Pritzker, and it's not Mike Madigan.
Nope. And people need to understand too, when we talk about the IEA, the Illinois Education Association, that organization is such a bureaucracy that what they do and accomplish often does not align with the beliefs and ideas of many of our educators, of our teachers.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But the structure that they have set up is such that if you're a teacher in a local, let's pick where you guys are at, and they're in one of the schools there, and they want to support their local union because they want to be represented by the union. There's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
They'll pay about $60 to their local union to be in that representation, and then they'll pay $700 to $800 to the state and federal Illinois Education Association, and they cannot choose not to. Mm-hmm. They are mandated to be locally represented to also fund those bureaucracies. And the Illinois Education Association takes in $50 to $70 million a year from our teachers across the state, who often will argue they're underpaid. They're taking in $70 million, and they use that machine to control Illinois politics.
Yeah. Yep. It's really a criminal operation.
Well,
and think about it, it's an inside. I mean, it's legal, but you really think about it, it's the underground railroad of politics. Nobody's in control in the office that they run. It's the dark money groups.
If a teacher goes and says, I want to be a part of my local union, I want to be represented, they'll tell them, okay, you have to be a member of the IEA and pay them $525 a year, of which at least 30 of it goes directly to a super PAC. And then you have to pay like $204 a year to the National Education Association. If you don't want to pay for those associations, you can't be represented by your local union. That's an impossible position to put many educators in.
Yeah, there's a benefit. So I'm at a local school here, and I'm an assistant in one of the classrooms in the El Paso Gridley area. I said it out loud. I don't care. I'm not nothing to hide. But one reason that was a benefit for unions in most of these schools is legal protections for teachers and anybody in the school that has a legal problem. That's the representation. That's probably the only benefit to being in a union anymore, because you pay for nothing else. People join the union because of that benefit, but then they don't do anything else with it because they just mandate the money. Like, well, I have money taken out of my check anyway, so just keep paying it. They have no idea where it goes. They don't care. They just want, I want legal protection. That's all I need. I don't care about the politics. Well, maybe you should, because the politics anymore have been driven by the unions more so than the actual protections.
Darren,
what are you thinking? You got something in that mind. I know. What are you thinking about?
Oh, yeah. So first of all, I apologize. My electricity keeps going out. Literally, I don't remember the last time this happened. It's went out like 4 times since we started.
Darren, come on. We know the reason. You're on the watch. You're on the watch list. They said that Darren Bailey cut. There's somebody outside. Go down and look at the line.
I tried to get on my phone, but there's just not enough power. It was too erratic. So here's the deal. First and foremost, everything we talk about for the next 45 minutes is fixable. We need to understand that. We, the people, have got to get involved. That's been my message. That's been my message after I served the first 2 years as a state rep. I naively, when I met you, David, and I got involved and got elected because my Rhino Republican was supported by the teachers unions, was supporting the 32% tax increase, same reason you got involved. Yeah, I thought, I'm going to show up. I want to do my duty for my kids and my grandkids and say I did something. So I show up for the first time in history and the super minority. And in 2019, when I showed up in Springfield, the Republicans had 44. Now we obviously have 40. And when I was a senator, we had 19. Now we have 18. And so I began to realize, I showed up thinking, okay, I'm going, and I did. I developed some pretty amazing relationships with Chicago Democrats. And I can show you, takes a little bit of time, some pretty cool things that happened over the 4 years that I served, 2 years in the House and 2 years in the Senate. My name's not on a lot of them, but I can show the trail of where I introduced something where it finally came out with a Democrat sponsor. But the problem is, that's what people look at. So your elected officials, they get elected and say, I want to do something. And in order to do something in Illinois and in a Democrat super majority, you end up compromising your values. So that's what's happening. These people, my history teacher, when I was in high school, was a staunch Democrat, went to church with her, and I knew her well. She was a great teacher. And in those days, Jim Edgar was governor, and she loved Jim Edgar. And not only just because he was from Charleston, but it took me years after serving a few years in Springfield, I began to realize why she loved Jim Edgar. Because Jim Edgar and almost most of the people that served between the 80s and up till now, the Republican called themselves Republicans, they are the problem. They are the reason that we are in this shape that we are. It's the Democrats don't have any ideas. The Republican Party has the platform. We have the answers. But what we don't have is the backbone to show up and stand on these laurels that can save our education, our families, our public safety, our border. And but back to, I guess, my first point, we can fix this. That's why I ran for governor, because I realized wire points. Go to wirepoints.org. They've got amazing information out there. You can subscribe to their email list. You get an update 7 days a week at 8 o'clock in the morning. It's amazing. They'll show you. They're here in Illinois. There's $12 million paid into the teachers union every year, and about $500,000 to $750,000 for administration. The other 1.5 is for litigation. And guess what? $8+ million goes towards lobbying. But if we, the people, get involved, if we take over our local county, 102 county Republican groups out there, and I can only tell you about a little over a dozen that are actually conservative groups doing their job. And I have no problem calling out the legislators, calling out the counties that are woke and need change. I will do that. In this latest election, we saw some of these county groups get flipped. It's pretty amazing. Rock Island, Will County, Williamson County, White County. It's really exciting to see that people run for precinct committee person, show up at these meetings, figure things out that, oh, wow, this isn't working right. Get others that think like them and vote some of these leaders out and replace them with true hardcore conservatives that are going to truly fight for the people. So that's how we fix it. But unfortunately, that takes some time. That takes some effort, and everybody's busy this day and age.
Well, Darren and Tom and Ryan, today we're going to name names. Obviously, this is a good friend of mine that's commenting, Annette Thompson. Annette, thanks for joining us. We have so many. I mean, this is pretty amazing. The count, I'm looking at the counters. You guys bring an audience and a lot of people. That's right. Annette says, Darren, you have encouraged me, and the reason I've gotten involved also. So going back to the governor's race, Tom, and I know that you were there for this. We're going to name names today, and we're going to talk about our own state reps. And you have a certain rep that you've been kind of taking to the woodshed, the proverbial woodshed, on your social media page, and I want to get to that. But we had the leader of the state party was in a room full of about 900 individuals at a dinner. I know you were there, Tom, because I rode with you to the dinner. That's when we also had Dan Calkins in the vehicle, and as we were crossing over the Illinois River, I said, Tom, is this the place where we throw him over the bridge?
Hey, don't be picking on my buddy Dan.
Because he did endorse you. He endorsed Dave Shistokis. Dave's a great guy, been on the DPB show. But we were in a room of 900 people. We knew what went down in the campaign of Darren Bailey with Jesse Sullivan and Richard Irvin and Gary Rabine. And he alluded to the fact that we had this element inside of our party that we had to root out, but he was unwilling to just point back to the back of the room and say, shame on you, Richard Irvin. And I understand why, because at that time we had a guy named Ken Griffin in Illinois before he took his company to Miami, and he was funding a lot of the Republican politics. But Ken Griffin's no longer here, and those donations and those contributors are dwindling as quickly as Darren just found out in his congressional race. We're losing steam because we're money does help when you are running campaigns. It's not the only thing, but it is a help. And if we don't start picking out and naming, I mean, I know that a lot of people believe that you don't, and I agree, you don't attack fellow Republicans. No, I'm not attacking fellow Republicans. I'm attacking fellow Democrats, because anytime you accept campaign contributions from a Democrat Party entity, I think you've already made a decision on where you stand in the political world. Is that not true, Tom?
Well, I would say that, yeah, I don't know if I call them Democrats, but I certainly call them compromised. Okay.
Mhm.
And you know, you're talking about, and let's back up a little bit to Mr. Griffin. Spending all of that money trying to influence a governor's race in Illinois. Okay. Personally, I thought it was a waste of money, because we can have a governor that's a Republican, even if Darren would have won. What are you going to do in the super minority? Darren and I are get anything done as governor, or Richard Irvin or Gary Rabine, because we don't have a legislature. We saw how effective Governor Rauner was. He didn't do anything in his term. But what you're talking about, and again, you're talking about Charlie Meyer, Representative Charlie Meyer, who happens to be my rep after redistricting when it used to be Blaine Wilhauer. Charlie's main contributor financially, 25% of his total donations over his political career of 13 years is the Illinois Education Association, which is the Democratic Teachers Union. It's his main contributor. And people have to ask themselves, if your main contributor is the Democratic Party, they must be pleased with what you're doing with that money. And if you were using that money in a way that didn't please the Democrats, they're not going to give it to you anymore. It's not rocket science. And so Charlie Meyer does not use that money to help Republicans get elected against Democrats. He does not use the money to help Republicans get elected against Democrats, because if he did, one, they would quit giving him the money. And if he did, we wouldn't have went from 54 state representatives to 40 during the time he's been in office. Mm-hmm. So what does Charlie do with the money? Charlie got $250,000, give or take, from the teachers union over his career. His two biggest expenditures during that point in time was $150,000 to the House Republican caucus, which I'll talk about in a second. And the second biggest expenditure was to himself, for over $100,000 for mileage that he reimburses himself to drive around the district and act like he's actually representing his constituents, which he's not. Before I get to the $150,000 he gave to the HRO, I have told people, and I think Darren will agree with me, right now, the fabulous 40, the 40 Republicans in the House of Representatives, the only thing that they should be working on, bar none, is how to help other Republicans across the state beat Democrats. Mm-hmm. In races that we have a statistical chance to take a Democrat seat away from it would place them with a Republican, because that's all the Democrats are thinking about. How do we take 40 Republicans and make them 36 or 35 or 30? How do we take the Senate and go from 19 to 18 to 17? That's all the Democrats think about. Mm-hmm. And they give money to people like Charlie Meyer to perpetuate that idea. Charlie does not use his money, David, to help gain seats. He uses it to protect himself, which they don't care about Charlie, because he's one vote out of 40. What the heck is he going to do to hurt Democrats? So Charlie gives that money primarily to the House Republican Organization. The House Republican Organization is the caucus of the House Republicans that's supposed to be for furthering and promoting Republican ideas, helping Republicans get elected across the state. They should use that money to try to get 45 seats, 50 seats, etc. With me? But here's what the money does. The money, because they don't have enough money to really help anybody, they use it as an insurance policy. So Charlie Meyer pays $10,000 a year, give or take, to the House Republican Organization. Every year he pays his dues. And he admits and acknowledges that that dues comes from the Democrats. When Charlie gives that money to the House Republican Organization, it's given to them with an understanding, you start shaking your head, Darren, because you know that if you draw a primary opponent in your district, They're going to take all their resources and compound that poor citizen into the ground with all their money, and you're not going to lose. So it's an insurance policy for people like Charlie Meyer to stay protected, to keep his little cushy job, be one of the fabulous 40. Let me give you an example. In 2018, Charlie Meyer drew a primary opponent in a man named Don Moore. Don Moore ran against Charlie for the House seat. Don Moore had $10,000. He just an everyday feller. And the House Republican organization came in and funneled $203,000 back to Charlie Meyer of the $150,000 that he had given him over his career. They spent $200,000 pounding Mr. Moore into oblivion, and he had no chance to take Charlie Meyer out in a Republican primary. That's what they used the dues from the House Republican organization for. That's why the Democrats give the money to Charlie, because Charlie doesn't use the money to help get Republicans elected in other districts. He uses the money as an insurance policy to protect himself.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense, you guys. That's exactly what's going on.
Yeah, and
he's laughing. He knows exactly that's what.
Well, and I want to hear your opinion, Darren. I mean, you've seen it lived out, serving as a rep, serving as a state senator, and now continuing your plight, seeking higher office. But Tom, the thing that's interesting, that you keep pointing out these numbers, and I want Darren to comment on this because we had a plan. You're right, Tom. We cannot win a statewide office, whether it's Secretary of State, Comptroller, Treasurer, you name it. It's not going to happen as long as we currently have the makeup of the General Assembly. To win back 5 seats, because I know that one of our commenters is asking, what is the answer? What do we do next? And I think we're going to get to that and what that's going to take. And there's not a Democrat solution to that. There's only a Republican solution. No, there's not a Democrat solution. There's only a Republican solution. And Darren, I know that we ran on this trying to get 5 state rep seats taken. Right now, Darren, you looked at the numbers, the certified vote that I sent you the document the other day. We're back in the same position we were before 2022. We don't have enough people running as Republicans. Once again, it was kind of a shot in the dark because they saw what you just mentioned, Tom. What were their chances of actually getting any traction?
Let me jump in here. Then Darren, please. I mean, you've got a lot of experience in the legislature. You know what I'm dealing with here. When they're talking about the solution, and I've been trying to have this conversation with the establishment politicians, with the state party, with the caucuses, and nobody cares because everybody is trying to be a self-survivalist. The only thing that we can do is to take all of the resources of the fabulous, I'm talking just about the House right now, of the fabulous 40, whatever resources they have that they can choose to use for this purpose. And we need to isolate. There's 4 races right now in the suburbs of the north, in Will County, Kane County, a little bit of Cook County. They're House races that we have a competitive possibility to win. We need to have the 40 people left. And a lot of our Republicans are from our part of the state, like Charlie Meyer. And they need to fire those resources off into a concerted effort in the north to start picking those Democrats off. You with me? But here's why it's having a hard time, David, getting that done. Because the first freaking time that Charlie Meyer starts taking that money that he gets from the Democrats and not just paying his dues for his insurance policy to the HRO, but he fires that money off to the north and starts trying to help people actually win against Democrats, they'll shut the spigot off on him. And when they shut the spigot off on him, he's going to be scared that he doesn't have his little cushy insurance policy if he draws a primary opponent and somebody might take him out. That's the biggest issue we got about trying to get ahead, is enough people got to put pressure on guys like Charlie and Dave Severin and Noreen Hammond, because they all get the same money from the cookie jar of the Democratic IEA, and they got to have pressure on them. And the House Republican organization, that Tony McCombie runs needs to have pressure from people saying, quit using all of this damn money to protect your little fiefdom of people in the super minority and use that money to try to grow the party. Because guess what? If Charlie Meyer gets a Republican primary opponent and he can't beat that person on his own, like Blaine Wilhauer just did, we'll get to that in a minute, then Charlie doesn't deserve to be there. He doesn't deserve to be there. And if we get another Republican in Charlie's seat, that's okay, because a Democrat's never going to win Charlie's seat because it's an 80-20 Republican district. Quit spending $200,000 to protect Charlie and send it up there and win a seat in Will County. Does that make sense, you guys?
Yeah. So I want to come back to that.
Risk it. Go ahead.
No, we will come back to it. Darren, I know you've been boxed
well,
out.
Therein lies the problem, Tom. One of the big you got two types of Republicans, and this, as Kim Miller said, what do? We have got, you said it earlier, Tom, on one of your posts. It's just like church. You go out and you get 10 people, and you make sure and then they go out and do it, or people are registered to vote. That during the process, people are educated, people are informed, and that people show up to vote. Our Republican, when we ran for governor, if 60% of all registered voters in the state of Illinois would have showed up, we could have won. But we had 45% turnout. And in this recent primary, 25% turnout. That is absolutely disgusting. And people they're beaten down. They feel defeated. They're throwing their hands up. We are Americans, and we cannot allow this. We don't give up. We don't do this. Get out, educate and inform your friends, and show up to vote, and make sure they do the same thing. And that's what, if some of these money people in the future coming up, I mean, just like you and I, Tom, the state of Illinois, the Republicans, they know who we are. No money needs to be spent telling people who we are. Think of what it'd be like in the next governor's race if somebody could prop up a candidate that everyone knows who they are, and yet put $50 to $100 million on getting the vote out, paying people in every community to go and load up and take people and get them registered. But the problem is this, and Tom, you're speaking it. I've witnessed. I had that. I got to know Don Moore as well. He is a great man, and I ran in that same cycle, and I had $1.5 million spent against me in 2018, the most conservative district in Southeast Illinois in the state. I ran for Senate 2 years later, and they put someone up against me again. So so within this is the problem, and this is where the people come in at, because first of all, you've got the sellouts like Charlie Meyer, and I'm telling you what. I'm going to say 60 to 70% of all Republicans who are elected in Springfield and DC are like that. They're bought, special interests. So they're there for the job. They just want. So, and then one of the other problems is on the other side of the spectrum, you've got people who really aren't getting out there and working for the people. They really don't need the job, but they get elected. Yeah, they go through the motion and they do the right things. But when it comes time to stand up, and I can point, basically all you have to do, you heard him speaking against me in in this recent race. You didn't see him show up anywhere in the governor's race. That is our problem. I mean, right now, Andrew Chesney in the Senate is one of the only ones that I have any faith in, and the members of the Freedom Caucus, 7 members, are really the only ones in the House that are truly fighting for us. If everyone else came in and said they were fighting for us, well, then doggone it, they'd be members of the Freedom Caucus, because when you look at what that stands for, they're the ones that have the fight for us. So that's where, if we, the people, and I know everybody probably listening to this right now, they voted, but listen, you'll be shocked when you get out there and you find out how many of your friends, your coworkers, your families, churches, where are the churches to stand up, if nothing else, the Sunday before election, whether it's primary or general, to remind people to vote. 70 to 80 cents of every dollar that goes to worldwide evangelism comes from right here in the U.S. And what better way to stifle that than to increase our taxes and split our families up and make people work more? But yet, this past the Sunday before the March 19th election, I kind of did a survey, and many churches, I asked people, well, did your church at least remind? No, as a matter of fact, one particular church, one of the assistant ministers stood up and talked how nasty and filthy politics was, just like he's washing his hands of it. That is our problem.
That is the biggest problem.
Yeah, David, and Darren, again, there's two parts of this conversation. And the part Darren's talking about it is because, again, to me, is how do we win elections against Democrats? That's a conversation in and of itself. And what do we do about our currently elected Republicans? What do they need to do or not do to put us in a position to start winning races against Democrats? So when I was giving my examples before about guys like Charlie Myers shooting money off to the north, there's a whole separate and independent conversation about what do we do with that money to be effective. That's a separate conversation. And Darren's right, is getting people to vote. I've often told people we blew a $50 to $100 million in that governor's race collectively between Darren. It had nothing to do with candidates. Darren was a good candidate. Mr. Irvin and all of them, $100 million, Mr. Griffin and Mr. Uline blew in that election because the money was not spent in a way that was ever going to be successful. And the Democrats have cornered the market on how to maximize ballot turnout, not voter turnout, ballot turnout. If we had that $100 million back that those two men blew before the 2030 cycle, I promise you I could turn this state red. If I had that $100 million bucks, let me go out here and put an infrastructure in place like the Democrats have got to maximize voter turnout, ballot gathering, all of the above. We'd win elections. We'd turn this state red. But we can't.
Wait a second. Wait a minute. Wait, Tom, did I just hear you put your name in the hat for the chairmanship of the state party? I think I did. Second. Can I get a motion? Can we get a second? Can we get a second?
The Republicans don't like me because the first thing that I would have to do in order to get us to a point to where we can win elections, if we had money and create this machine, is get our current super minority people on board with that. And they're never going to get on board with that because they got to put themselves at risk. And going back to my beloved Charlie Meyer, Charlie would have to be on board to say, I'm going to help utilize my resources to perpetuate a plan that makes Republicans more competitive against Democrats so we can win. Because Charlie knows that when he makes that strategic decision, he's going to lose the cookie jar from the Democrats because they'll cut him off, and it'll be like Blaine Wilhauer. Blaine doesn't get a freaking penny from the Democratic Teachers Union.
Well, let's talk about Blaine. Talk a little bit about Blaine.
Race. Go ahead.
No, I want you to talk about it because I happened to be at the Fayette County dinner, Lincoln Day dinner. You were there. Blaine was there. I happened to sit at the table of the chair of the party at the time. I don't think he's the chair any longer. He might be. But he was Blaine's opponent. And I was awestruck to find out that we had a Republican candidate to run against Blaine, first and foremost, because of the makeup of the counties of that district. But second, I was just blown away that the teachers unions and other unions that are favorable to the Democratic way of life had come in full force and financed this guy to the sum of about $175,000 in a downstate state rep race where the incumbent raised a little bit close to $100,000. But that was intentional, right? It was there to send a message.
Let me take it a step further for you, Mr. Blumenshine. Who do you think was even in the background behind the Illinois Education Association and the Democrats? Who was in the background, maybe egging them on a little bit or just subtly going, oh, that'd be okay. Go push this guy against Blaine. Who do you think that might have been, sir?
Would have been the HRO?
I don't know. What do you think? You think Tony McCombie's a fan of Blaine Wilhauer?
Yeah.
Let me tell you about this. Blaine Wilhauer, again, and Blaine and my styles are similar, but a little bit different. But Blaine is, for one thing, that I agree with. How do we come up with a plan to increase the number of seats that the Republicans have? And Blaine is the kind of man that's willing to risk his own political career to make that happen. That's a rare duck, and that's not Charlie Meyer.
Right.
So Blaine speaks out a lot. When we had COVID going on, Blaine was one of them that was up there breathing fire with me and others trying to stop that stuff. Guys like Charlie Meyer, who were bought off by the Democrats, never said a word. They were like, oh, we don't agree with the COVID mandates, but Charlie wouldn't fight back. So the teachers union and the HRO and all the establishment Republicans want Blaine gone. They want him gone because he's not a Charlie Meyer establishment. As my friend Don Tracy, the chairman of the Republican Party, says, he's not a squeamish Republican. They like squeamish Republicans.
Right. So
go ahead, Ryan.
Well, I just
you
with the money issue, if the spigot gets shut off, can you still win as a candidate when you have leadership in the party still not supporting your way of doing things? Where does the money come from?
You're talking about somebody like Charlie Meyer?
Well, just in general, if somebody says, no, I'm not going to use this money for,
protecting myself,
Democrats reason. Yeah. So you're going to take the school money, the teachers union money, and use it the way it's supposed to be used. If you've given money, if they begin to turn off that spigot, where do we get more money or more? How can we win without getting that money?
Win against who? That's the question.
Where we find the candidates? Where does the resources come from once that money dries up? And is it a leadership problem of the party? Because at the top, if they're not going to help candidates push away from the school boards or the union agenda, the Democrat agenda, where does that come from? It starts at the top, right? It has to start with leadership. You can't support candidates for running for office as a leadership if you support the money coming in from Democrat-run organizations.
One of Tony McCombie's the minority leader, and one of her major contributors is also the teachers union.
Yeah. So does it start at the top of the party where they have a different change of, I guess, a change of movement to stop the money going towards Democrat-run?
Well, what the party at the caucus level has to do, one of the things they have to do is they have to say, look, we as an organization are not going to use our resources to fund incumbents against a Republican primary challenger. Right. If you draw a primary challenge like Charlie Meyer, if you draw a challenger, we are not going to fund your defense against, like Don Moore had $10,000 and Charlie had $250,000. That has to be done. But let me ask you this. What behavioral changes would that cause somebody like Charlie? Let's say that Charlie Meyer knows that the Republican organization is not going to fight for him if he draws a primary challenge. Do you think he still sends that money to the HRO? Hell no, he doesn't send that money anymore.
No.
He's going to keep it, right? He's going to have to figure out how to use it. But to say, do you need teachers' money to survive as a Republican in a Charlie Meyer district? Ask Blaine Wilhauer the question, because Blaine's district is right next to Charlie's. He doesn't get a penny from the teachers union, and Blaine fought off the teachers union and got 80% of the vote.
80%. That's right. 80% of the vote.
Right. So it's more about the attitude at the top versus where the money's coming from.
I know where you're going with this, Ryan.
Go ahead.
And I'm going to ask this question of both Darren and Tom. Since 2022, November, when both of you were defeated, and of course, I've thrown these numbers out to my audience many times, and I think they're perplexing at the least. When you look at the Republican Party, has only been able to garner about 1.7 million, give or take a few penny.
1.82 was our best when Ronner.
I don't know if Ronner got 1.8 because I went through the.
He lost to JB, got 2.5. But
okay, yeah. Well, I thought he was still under 1.8, but I'll have to go look at that because I looked at. I use Ballotpedia. You look it up because I compared the 4 different races and saw the movement where JB went in 4 years. He received 800,000 more votes than Pat Quinn. And then, of course, the election that you and Darren were involved with statewide, JB and his other acolytes in Secretary of State, Attorney General Kwame Raoul, they ended up with 300,000 less votes than what JB got in 2018 in 2022. But that's not really, I mean, that's suspect in of itself. But we know this is being used because you and I sat there, Tom. I know Darren wasn't able to attend the Bolingbrook meeting of the Central States Committee. You and I were sitting there, and they did a PowerPoint presentation, the leadership of the Republican Party here in Illinois. And they wanted to really show the difference of Darren Bailey and Bruce Rauner for a very minute amount of votes. Have has anyone within the leadership of the Republican Party reached out to two of the, what I would consider two of the leaders of the Republican Party in Illinois since 2022?
No.
Has leadership reached out to either one of you?
We threaten their existence.
Mm-hmm.
And people are getting so frustrated when you do the when you prorate the votes. You'll see that even in Chicago, we did amazing. We with a 45% turnout. I'm not sure what it was over 50, well over 50 whenever Rauner ran against Pritzker. That was it. So they call us, hard right, hardliners. And the fact that Tom and I will speak the truth, and that's what I believe here in Illinois, this movement that Tom and I have been able to build, I think it's second across this nation only to the Trump movement. The people in Illinois they're ready. And I believe in Illinois, I believe we are a red state. You take a look at Cook County, they always vote 30%. This recent primary, whenever the rest of the state came in at 15 to 25%, guess what Cook County was? They were right at 31%. But you've got 51%, 55% of the residents in Cook County. They work for the cities, they work for the counties, they work for the state, they work for the federal government, they're on disability, on and on and on. They're living off the government dole. So that percentage is usually the one that really turns out and votes. And then you filter on down to every other county. Yes, we had problems. So we had a shift in the collars, but that was because of people moving out of the city into the collar counties. But Tom's right. If we could help direct someone with lots of money who is willing to come in and spend it correctly on getting the vote out, that's what J.B. Pritzker did in 22. Spent $35 million getting the vote out. We were up. I was walking the streets up there, and many of these once and twice a week, we would go and walk with some of the people walking. We'd put our walk cards in our pockets like good little Republicans, and we'd knock on doors. Hey, I'm Darren Bailey, and here's my card, and I hope you vote for me, and blah blah blah. And once early voting started, the crowds doubled. And there were people with these backpacks and briefcases. And I finally, one day, I recognized a staffer in a Democrat office in Springfield. And I ran across the street and I asked her, I said, "Oh, what are you guys doing?" And she said, "Well, we're soliciting low propensity voters." And she gets out her iPad and shows me what they're doing. They're finding people that hadn't voted in 10, 15 years. And by now they knew that person had 3, 4, 5, 6 others who were old enough to vote in their house and show up to their door and get them back into the system. And do you want to register everybody else? Well, sure. And hey, we'll come back and bring your ballot to your house next week. Is that okay? Yeah. Bring it back a week later. And do you need any help filling your ballot out? We'll come back next week and pick it up, and we can sure help you, give you some advice. That's how they're doing this. That's where their money is going. And Tom's right. We need to have there's a bunch of things that need to happen. We need to have a mind shift with where our money's spent. Tom's dead on. I'm sorry, but it's kind of like teaching an old dog new tricks. We need to get rid of some of these people who are holding office, who are failing us. And we need to start, and the people need to get out there and get all of our friends registered and get them out to vote, just to prove the fact this fall election, wished it would have happened in this primary, but this fall election would be a perfect time to experiment with that. And I know we've got a whole host of other things, but I in order to contest the machines or anything else here in Illinois, we got to have a 55, 60% turnout to really prove that. And there's no reason why we shouldn't get that.
And I brought that up in Fayette County, as I did in Montgomery County, Darren. David Webb from Patriot Mobile Radio on XM said it best this morning. And it's really the message I think that you're bringing forth, Darren. It takes people. We're not going to realize this. And, take a page out of the Democrat Party. He said it's worthy of being modeled. Mm-hmm. They have done an exceptional job of going door to door. The clipboards, he talked about young people. He said, all those young people have to do is sit there and have 20 people walk by them. But if just one of them, that's a pretty good turnout over time with the amount of people that they're mobilizing. I mentioned this, and you might have recalled this, Tom. We need to fortify the counties that we can fortify. And Charlie Meyer doesn't help us fortify a county or a district. We need to fortify those people who are willing to step forward and represent the people of Illinois. But then we have to do it county by county, precinct by precinct. And that's the only way. We're less right now. We're 98 days from November 5th.
Nothing. Let's be clear, David. In 2024, nothing's going to happen.
Yeah, that's right.
Nothing's going to happen. We are fooling ourselves. If there's going to be anything, so could we win a House seat? Maybe, yes. But I pulled the numbers up, and this is worthy of conversation. In 2014, when Governor Ronner won, he got 1.82 million votes.
Okay, so it was 1.8. I didn't know.
1.82. Now, Pat Quinn only got 1.68. So Pat ended up losing by 140,000 votes, but let's call it 1.7 to 1.8 Ronner victory, okay? Yeah. You jump to the next cycle, Bruce Ronner gets a little under 1.8, so about the same amount, within 50,000. J.B. Pritzker gets 2.45 million votes. Now, that was not miraculously, 800,000 people decided we'd just go vote this year. Okay? They started creating a machine that ensures they don't have low voter turnout as Democrats anymore. Okay? Now, let me go on. Mr. Bailey, I don't know how many times I freaking heard across the state that Darren just too far conservative to win an election. Right?
Too conservative.
To win an election. Mathematically, I disagree because we don't go into that. But Darren only got 25,000 less votes than Bruce Ronner in that election cycle.
That's right.
Right? 25,000. Now, Bruce was a little different Republican than Darren, right? That's fine. So obviously, Darren wasn't too conservative because he competed with some would call a pretty moderate or maybe a little left-leaning Republican like Bruce Ronner. My point, but then J.B. Pritzker only got 2.25, 300,000 less, as you pointed out, David. Yeah. What's important about that is I think there were a lot of people disenfranchised with Pritzker because of his COVID mandates that didn't turn out to vote on Election Day. But they were able to still overcome that low voter turnout because of the machine that he created with mail-in ballots. And I have been telling Republicans since the election, I said, if you can't figure out how to get 2.2 million Republican votes, don't even talk about statewide elections. It doesn't freaking matter. You need to add 400 to 500,000 votes statewide to compete in a race. I don't care who your candidate is.
That's right.
Darren, or pick the most left-leaning Republican, Charlie Meyer of the world. You're not going to get more than 1.8 because these people between 1.8 and 2.3 are low propensity, low voter turnout people, low information people. They don't really pay attention to anything, but the kids with the backpacks have got them signed up and they're voting how they're being encouraged to vote because that person that doesn't even know who the current governor of Illinois is, when he votes or she votes, it's just as influential as when Darren or David or any of you guys vote.
Well, and John Thompson comments and says, you guys are right, on target, and haven't even talked about the election corruption. And you know what?
It's a distraction in Illinois.
Well, bottom line is corruption in the ballot box in Illinois is as old as almost Illinois, but I understand it's taken on a new direction. But I obviously we appreciate the comment because there is something to look at. But Darren said it best. Until we, and you did too, Tom, until we come up with another 200, 300,000 votes, ballots, we're just whistling in the graveyard.
Absolutely.
And that's and you're right, Tom. Is 2024 lost? Well, outside of the presidential campaign, it would be nice to see Trump close to a single-digit loss. I don't know if it's going to get there, not based on the primary turnout. And the discrepancy right now is a couple 100,000 votes between Biden and Trump. And
President Trump's going to lose Illinois. That's fine. I pray that he wins the United States, but he's going to lose. But we as Illinoisans should not be so focused on the presidential race like far too many are. We need to be focused on Illinois and how do we win. If we could win 3 House seats in Illinois this election cycle, I would be freaking ecstatic. but
Yeah.
nobody's talking about how to do it.
Well,
Yeah.
and that's the thing. So if we could, you said there's some viable candidates running on the Republican ticket.
Absolutely.
And if we could pick up at least 2-3 seats, over 6 election cycles, we could turn that supermajority away.
But
And
the House caucus has no money to help that happen. They only got $200,000 because they've spent millions of dollars over the last several years fighting for their establishment politicians. So they're broke.
David Webb had somebody on his program today, and I usually don't listen to David Webb, but I sure did enjoy it this morning. And my friend Joanne Knippmeyer, and I know she's in the chat right now, and she's with Surus. Yeah, she's all in, even though she's basking in sunny Florida right now, a free state. There's something to be said for 2025. This is the minor leagues. I call it the minor leagues. By no means are any of those minor positions, I should say. But it's the township races.
Yeah.
It's going to be your school board races. How do we come up with, when we can't even control the field when it comes to the municipal races? Because everything that you talked about, Tom, my friend Brad Worth here locally ran for Unit 5 school board. And he called me up one day and he said, David, I just listened to J.B. Pritzker, and he went on a tirade about how you're extremist, xenophobic, homophobic, transphobic, and all the other phobias. And he said, it's people that think that they can run for school board, and I know who he was talking about, and someday actually think they can be governor. So he was taking a backhand at Darren. But my friend Brad said, David, he goes, did you see the amount of money that was just poured into the Unit 5 referendum PAC that was trying to get this legislation pushed forward, or this referendum pushed forward? And I said, no. He goes, I can, as a country companies finance guy, I think I could do fairly well in the county race for school board, but I can't beat J.B. Pritzker. And I said, yep, Brad, you're right. You can't beat J.B. Pritzker. J.B. dumped $300,000 into school board races. Almost unheard of. And this is what I think is a conversation that we have to have too, because they're going to continue to fund off-year elections because they need to have, what I always say, building the bench. We don't necessarily have that in Illinois. We've got a few all-star hitters like Adam Niemerg and Blaine Wilhauer, and upcomers like Ryan McKenzie and Kat Peterson and Paul Garcia. But we don't seem to do anything to elevate the next generation, the generation after that, because I know we're in triage.
Triage is a good way to put it. You're exactly right.
I think if we keep doing what we're doing right now, after this frustrating loss with Congress, and gosh, 2 days after the primary, when in fact the numbers, we finished within a point, less than about 800 votes away. My congressman and voted yes for the $1.2 trillion spending package, and there's that's what's taking place, and that's what we have to do. When people like us give up and quit going out and hoping and planning and fighting for a better tomorrow, then all is lost. As long as there's someone out there willing, that doesn't care to speak the truth, that doesn't care to stand up and call somebody out by name and say, hey, you're not doing a good job. Now, you can fix that. You have that choice, and people, constituents, get in there and let that person know you're not happy. Get involved, get educated, understand what they're doing and what they're not doing. That is our hope, and that is the only way. It doesn't matter. Joe Blow comes in with $1 billion to fund a candidate. Right. We have to have educated constituents, and we have to have people on the front lines. And I am so thrilled that there's people out there. There's the Tom DeVores. There's the you two guys on this show. We have to keep this up, and there is a process to get people planted, educated, informed, and fighting. And until that's done, until there's no one left to speaking the truth, we have hope. We have a chance, and And I just pray that it comes sooner than later, because every day that goes by, I am more and more saddened for my children and my grandchildren of what this future holds for them. And that's why Cindy and I will never give up. And by the grace of God, I think what I'm hearing from all the three of you, that you have no intent and plans on giving up either. And thank you so much to everyone that's out there listening and joining in right now, because this is how we do it.
Well, and Delbra Pratt, I hope I said that right, Delbra,
Yep.
says it best. This is a great conversation. So few will spend the time to dig into the nitty-gritty details, but it has to happen. And I heard somebody say that on your show, a commenter, Tom, is they're hearing this for the first time.
They are hearing it for the first time. And it's again, me having a finance background, it really helps, because I stood there at a meeting with Charlie Meyer. He was at a Lincoln Day dinner. And another thing people need to know about Charlie Meyer is that he illegally censors his constituents on his social, or his representative page. He blocks people and he hides their comments. That's another conversation. But when Charlie stood there and told people in a room that he uses the money that he gets from the Democrats to help get Republicans elected. That's what he says, David. I use the money to help get Republicans elected. He gave $150,000 of that money to help keep himself elected.
Right.
And I went and did an analysis, because there were two races in 2022, Jen Cordy and I think is it Kevin Schmidt, I think, in our area here, that were in actual races against Democrats. So these were races where we could pick up seats, right? The ones that matter, not Charlie funding his own defense against a primary opponent.
Yeah.
And Charlie was criticizing Blaine Wilhauer and Chris Miller and others because they don't pay dues to the HRO. That's what he was saying. They don't pay dues. I think it's wrong. Now, again, the dues that are paid to the HRO are not to help Republicans beat Democrats.
Right.
They're to help keep Republicans in their superminority seat to fend off primaries. So I looked at Chris Miller and I looked at Blaine Wilhauer's accounts, and I said, how much money did Blaine and Chris donate to Republicans running against Democrats like Jennifer Cordy and Kevin Schmidt compared to Charlie? And I posted that out on my social media. And wouldn't you know that Blaine and Chris had collectively gave tens of thousands of dollars to Jennifer Cordy and Kevin Schmidt to try to beat a Democrat. And you know how much Charlie given them both? One of them he gave $1,000 and the other one he gave $1,500. He's not helping get Democrats
He's in it for himself.
Elected against Democrats. He's using that money to protect himself and to pay himself $100,000 of money for mileage reimbursement to go into chicken dinners and act like he's representing people. Voted for the biggest tax increase in history in Illinois. He voted to double the gas tax. He refused to support the Invest in Kids tax credit. That's the kind of Republican he is. And I want people to understand that. That's all I'm doing.
Well, and you know what? This is just, we're just getting started. I've said since the beginning of the year, we need to dedicate platforms like this, and I'm fine with it. I mean, I'm not getting wealthy with the DPB show yet. Nor do I plan to, because that's right. Well, it's not the intention. It was never my intention. When I ran against Dan Brady, my intention was because Kyle McCarter said Dan Brady's going to propose to raise gas tax, and he's got support to do it, and blah 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 blah. And I said, well, I just can't get behind that, and I already knew something was wrong, and I understand term limits is a good conversation to have, because we need term limits. There's no question about that. When you have a speaker who is able to hold the gavel for 37 years and do everything that Mike Madigan did over his tenure. But more importantly, I think that this conversation has to continue, because I don't think we have enough people who are educated about this. I saw some of the commenters, and I appreciate all of my friends, family, and those who like to listen to the DPB show. They're still going down the same old road, thinking that if we don't at least know how it's broken. My show was founded on Illinois is broken. See how I did that? I did my own sound effects. And the corruption. My first campaign manager did not want me to say the C word out loud, because he thought that people would look upon me as a crazy, that that we speak truth about where Illinois is.
Mhm.
Illinois is corrupt.
Yeah.
We know that. I mean, anybody that doesn't believe that Illinois is corrupt, obviously you're way behind the ledger on this. But the brokenness can be fixed. The corruption can be pointed out. What you just gave us today, Tom and Darren, was an insight to what's happening. So I'm going to let both of you take about 3 minutes to kind of wrap it up, because I don't believe in making my audience sit through a repeat of what we've already beat up on. We've got to come out and deliver a messaging to the state that we're not going to sit back and not have these conversations in public forums. Go ahead, Darren. You start off, and I'll let Tom wrap it up.
Well, I like what Tom's doing with this rant on with Charlie, because in the past I've failed to just name the people that are causing these problems. So, our future, the future of this nation is at stake. The future of good education for our children is at stake. Everything that we believe and hold dear to is at stake. So it's time, much like 250 years ago when men and women took up arms to become a nation. They didn't agree always with their neighbors or the people they sat beside with in church. So it's time to call it what it is, and it's time to start equipping people again. And everyone that's listening to this right now, gosh, your social media, follow David, Paul, and Tom and myself, and when we do our lives, share those, hit that share button, and let people know we're blessed that this is a free form of messaging. Right now, I believe it's the most effective form of messaging. So I'm glad and I'm happy to be here with you guys. And what not just the four of us do, but everyone out there listening, get out there and get the message out and keep talking and spur your church along, spur your Republican county groups along, and don't you dare give up on holding your elected officials accountable, because you've got the rogues like Charlie Meyer who are just sold out, but then you've also got them on the other side who on the outside appear to be good, but are really also keeping people like Tom and I at bay, because they don't want to. They don't, they just want to let politics be politics. So thank you so much for this today.
All right. Well, thank you, Darren. Obviously, I'm going to wrap it up here in a second, but Tom, go ahead. And did you do a Joe Biden on me and take a nap? Is that what you're doing there?
Darren's asked me that before, and I sit in a courtroom. It's funny. If I'm in a courtroom and I'm listening to what I really just don't want, I want to tune everything else out and just hear, I'll shut my eyes sometimes because it helps me concentrate. And I've had judges sometimes say, Tom, you all right? And I'm like, I'm here. I'm just listening. So I can get distracted with what I'm looking at easily. So thank you, David, for that. And then for having us today. Human beings, we easily get distracted. We get distracted on things that are passionate to us. And when we do that, we lose sight of what it is we should focus on. And I spend a whole lot of time trying to bring people back and having bits and pieces of what to focus on. It doesn't mean that the other things that they're passionate about aren't important. I was catching a lot of grief about, am I pro-choice enough or pro-life enough or anti-this or plus this and all of that. And I'm like, that stuff doesn't matter because we are in the super minority. And I'm not running for office. So don't worry about what I think about anything. And let's focus on what matters. How do we win elections as Republicans? And I get in a room of what I would call intelligent political actors, and they'll start talking about world peace in 5 freaking minutes. And I get upset. Let's talk about winning elections in Illinois. And I focus on House seats and Senate seats. If we're not talking about that, I do not care. And we'll talk about world peace and abortion and all that stuff later. So that's what I ask people to do. If you live in one of the House seats that has one of the 40 people, you have to demand that these 40 House of Representative members work on a plan to win House seats from Democrats. Not how to protect themselves, because I'm here to tell you all with 100% certainty, they're all in self-protection mode. My representative, Charlie Myers, is the king of self-protection mode. How do we help win seats? Show us a plan. They don't have a plan right now. I guarantee you they don't have a freaking plan because I've been asking for it. They don't have one. I know they don't have one. I'm talking to the House members that are House candidates up in the north where we can win some seats. Nobody from the House caucus calls them. Nobody from the state party calls them. It's complete silence. Demand they come up with a plan. Because if we don't have a plan that's supported by our few minority people that's left, it's never going to work. They got to be on board. It means they got to take a risk. They got to take a risk that if they get on board to make Republicans better, Democrats aren't going to like them, and they might come after them the way they come after Blaine Wilhauer. And that's okay. You got to be willing to risk it. So that's what I would ask them to concentrate on. How do we win elections? And demand that your Republican representatives explain to you what their plan is. And if they don't have a plan and they're not willing to take a risk, you throw their butts out and you get somebody in there that's going to fight.
Yep.
Wow. Well, obviously we're at an hour and 10 minutes, so we're 10 minutes over time. My wife always tells me, do not worry about the time, especially on a day like this. But yours truly has a weak bladder. So I can only go so long on the air. That's just how we roll. But you know, there's a couple other topics I want us to look into the future and talk about when we come back together. And I know we're going to do this. One, we had, kiddingly, we said, there's the law firm, the new law firm in Washington, D.C. of Schumer, McConnell, Jeffries, and Johnson. They're an acting law firm. Well, there's a similar law firm here in Illinois amongst the General Assembly. Our leadership does compromise, as you said, Tom, and they have been compromising year after year after year after year after year, which is why we are so lost when it comes to the difference between how many Democrats there are in the General Assembly and how many Republicans. So we do have our work cut out for us. I'm one that I'm not giving up, and I know none of you are. And I'm going to be at the state convention. And I'm doing the deep dive and I'm digging deep. I'm just understanding how you put together a state convention. And it's an exercise in a dumpster of clowns rolling down the street. And I say that because we don't truly have a laser focus of doing what I have said over and over again. And that is restoring Illinois, making Illinois great again. It can be done. I know we believe it, but it only happens when we start understanding the problem. You can't fix something if you don't understand what it is.
Go ask Darren Tracy what his plan is to pick up seats in the next 4 cycles.
Well, and good. Thank you, Tom, because I also had one of my senior moments there. I thought I was wrapping things up and my mind got all lost. It's probably because I have to go to the restroom, but the point being is, and I heard this number, and I don't know if it's true, but I think it's pretty close. It's 10,500 precincts across Illinois. And when I sat on a phone call with the leadership of the Republican Party and asked how many of those precincts in Illinois have precinct committee people, no one could give me a number or a percentage. If you don't even know your numbers, as you said, Tom, as a finance guy, Darren is a financial guy. He runs a farm. That's what you guys do, right? You ran a law firm. You have plenty of other things that you're involved in, businesses. If you don't even know the basic numbers, here in McLean County, we just added 20 precincts to McLean County. We're up to 140, I think it's 141 precincts. We only have 44 precincts filled.
It was 25% in the election of 2022 out of the 10,500, or less than 2,500 is 2,488 were all that was filled.
Yeah.
David, I created and have some numbers with a battle plan of sorts to say, okay, if we need to add 500,000 votes to win a statewide election, and that would flow down to state house races too, we need 500,000 votes. And we're going to pro rata shift those 500,000 votes across the state, eliminating Cook County out of the conversation completely.
Yes.
Wipe those 5 million out. We got 8 million people left. And of those 8 million people, we got to add 500,000 votes. And we're going to add them by adding new people that register to vote, that think like us, or getting people that are registered to vote that haven't voted much to go vote more often, like Darren was facing. McLeansboro, how many votes do you need to add to get to where we're at because of the other 100 counties? By precinct, break it down. We need to get these votes from here. If we do that statewide, and that's, remember I was telling you $100 million if I had that $100 million?
Mhm.
If we did that statewide in Bond County, McLean County, Coles County, and Darren with Clay County, every county, we need this many votes from you, and we're going to help you lay out the plan. We do that, this is a red state. But Don Tracy's not having that conversation. The State Central Committee, which is 17 people, a few of them are good, most of it's a cluster, are not having that conversation. The caucuses are not having that conversation. The Charlie Myers of the world are not having that conversation. And since they're not having that conversation, Republicans are suffering. And Charlie gets his $120,000 a year and his $10,000 a mileage, and he goes to the chicken dinners, and everybody's happy.
The beautiful thing about the DPB show and being and having the privilege of being in that courtroom July 2nd of 2020 when Tom DeVore and Darren Bailey took on the governor is this: we are now having that conversation, and we're going to continue to have that conversation. We had to fight for 2022. We're still fighting in 2024, but I believe that, as Douglas MacArthur said, we've just begun to fight. And thank you guys for coming on today. Thank you for being part of this. I know, once again, this is 75 minutes, but share with your friends, get them on. We're going to keep announcements. So if Tom does another one of these Facebook Lives, with Darren or by himself, I want you to be out there supporting him, because this is how we get the message out, and we share it with others, and we go out and become our own precinct committeeman. I'm a precinct committeeman. Ryan is going to be a precinct committeeman, right?
Yeah,
Ryan?
I am.
That's right. He is a precinct committeeman. You've got to be a precinct committeeman. You've got to get involved. It's one thing just to be a talking head, but another thing to put your money where your mouth is. Get out there, grab the clipboard, get people involved. Hey guys, thank you. What a great show. I am going to end the live stream. I always do this by saying that I wish people peace, because obviously it's important to have peace and family in your life. I also tell them that I love them, but Jesus loves them a whole lot more than I'm capable of loving them. So thank God for that. But until our next, obviously Thursday, we're only at Tuesday this week. Till Thursday, I bid you all farewell.
Take care. See you guys.